Good morning, Holly here. This is my continuing effort to help people combat the corona quarantine boredom. And so I thought that I would help maybe introduce some people to some books or movies, not necessarily the new ones that are new out on Netflix and Hulu that everybody's talking about, but maybe some more kind of oldies but goodies that you may have never heard of before. So today, instead of just talking about a book I'd like to recommend, I'm actually going to suggest an author. And this is mostly going to be for a younger audience because I think that a lot of people on the other side of 40 may already be familiar with this woman, but for the younger crowd, there's a lot of you that have probably never heard of her before. And her name was Erma Bombeck. And she was a humorous writer, newspaper columns and books, and she had a rather lengthy career writing very comically about the ordinary life of a Midwestern housewife. So a little backstory on Erma. She was born in 1927 in Ohio, and at a very young age, she fell in love with reading and writing. She actually had her first column in junior high. She had a humorous column that she wrote, and she continued to write through high school and into college. Her plan was to be a journalist, and in 1949, she married her husband, Bill, and she continued working as a journalist for a while. And she and Bill were trying to have a family, and the doctors told her that it was highly unlikely that she would ever be able to have babies. And so she and Bill, not discouraged, decided we're going to adopt. And in 1953, they adopted their daughter, Betsy. And they'd only had Betsy a short period of time when she discovered that she was pregnant. And in 1955, she gave birth to her son, Andrew. And then in 1958, she had a second son named Matthew. So the family lived in Ohio for years. In 1953, when they adopted Betsy, she had just decided that she was going to become a full-time housewife and mom. She gave up writing, left it behind, and started taking care of her family. And she did that for several years. And then in 1964, she started writing again, and it started out as just a weekly column at her local newspaper, and she got paid $3 a column for it. The following year, there was a second newspaper that requested columns as well, so she started writing 2 columns a week and got paid $50 a week on them, and they called her columns At Wit's End. That was the name of the title of the column, rather. And in 3 weeks, she had been picked up. She was in national syndication in 36 major newspapers across the country. In 1966, she started actually traveling and lecturing in cities where her column appeared. Her shows were very popular, and sometimes she spoke at, women's groups, things like that, but people who were familiar with her column would request for her to come in and talk, so she'd actually started traveling quite a bit. In the 1970s, her family moved to Arizona, which she really, truly loved. It seemed the whole family really kind of flourished in the desert. From 1975 to 1986, she made appearances on Good Morning America, which is when she really became kind of a household name. A lot more people were familiar with her once she started getting exposure from television. But I mean, by this point in time, starting in the 70s, her column was in over 900 newspapers throughout the US and Canada. She had also started writing books, and over the course of her career, she wrote 15 different books. Now, all this time, Erma had a secret. At the age of 20, she had been diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease, which was genetic and untreatable. There was no treatment, there was no cure. Progressively, her kidneys just got worse and worse. And she kept it a secret for a very long time. Even when she was on dialysis daily, she kept her condition a secret from the public. At one point in time, she had to have one of her kidneys removed. Then she was down to just the one. She had also battled breast cancer and had a mastectomy, which she writes about very humorously in one of her books. Very honestly, but also with quite a bit of humor. So then in 1996, April 3rd, 1996, she got a kidney transplant. And on April 22nd of 1996, she died from complications of the surgery. She had only gone public with her condition in the last 3 years of her life. She had kept it a secret all that time. She was 69 at the time of her death, and her family buried her back in Ohio, and her grave is covered by a large rock that they brought from the Arizona desert. So, on that sad note, let's get back to the humor. And like I said, she wrote 15 different books, and these are just the ones that I have in my personal collection from my library. So this is the Erma Bombeck Four of a Kind collection, and this one contains The Grass is Always Greener Over the Septic Tank, If Life is a Bowl of Cherries, What Am I Doing in the Pits, Aunt Irma's Coat Book, How to Get from Monday to Friday in 12 Days, and Motherhood, the Second Oldest Profession. So that's that collection. We have Erma Bombeck, Family, The Ties That Bind and Gag. As you'll notice, she had a lot of humorous titles to things. Now this is an interesting one because this is one of the few, it's the only one I know of that isn't overly humorous. This one is called I Want to Grow Hair, I Want to Grow Up, I Want to Go to Boise. This is a book about children surviving cancer. And there is humor to it, but this one was also quite a bit more serious, and it's a fantastic book though. It really is an amazing book. If you know anyone that's had to deal with the terror of having a child fighting cancer, I mean, it really is such a great book, and it's got drawings from some of the children are inside, and you know, here's a picture of Garfield with their chemo. I hate this machine. So I mean, it's the kids speaking honestly about what it's like from their point of view going through these things, and sometimes it is a little funny and sometimes it's quite sad, but still it's a really fantastic book. And then we get to one of my absolute personal favorites, A Marriage Made in Heaven or Too Tired for an Affair. Oh, and here's a great picture of Irma on the back. Now this one chronicles her marriage. I don't remember what year this was written, but this goes from her wedding day in 1949 up to what at the time would have been present day, which was 1993. So yeah, just a couple of years before her passing, and it really covers her marriage to Bill, and so funny because they're like a lot of relationships where it's kind of a case of opposites attract. And in the beginning, she's talking about all of the changes that she planned on making, all of the ways that she was going to change him and shape him and mold him. And in the end, she kind of reflects on how well she did with that. Very, very funny book. And then a great one if you are stuck inside right now and maybe wanting to live vicariously through someone else's adventures, her travel book, when you look like your passport photo, it's time to go home. Now this is another one, so funny. I've read A Marriage Made in Heaven and When You Look Like Your Passport Photo. I have read each of those numerous times. They're definitely my two personal favorite. This one covers all of her travels, whether it's, you know, cruises that she and Bill went on, or a 21-day European tour, family trips that the kids take to national parks, and just so funny, so funny. And then the last one that I have is All I Know About Animal Behavior I Learned in Loman's Dressing Room. And she has a few others that I don't have in my personal collection. Her first one was called At Wit's End, and it was a collection of the columns that she had been writing, and they had put together and put them in a book. Just Wait Till You Have Children of Your Own. I Lost Everything in the Postnatal Depression. Yeah, I think those are the only ones that I don't have. So anything Erma Bombeck I could always recommend. Funny. Some of the pop culture references might be a little bit dated, but the themes are still the same. You know, for her, she couldn't understand her children's need to have this incredibly long hair that hung in their faces, because that's what the kids were doing when her kids were growing up. That's what they were doing. Her children grew up through, like, you know, the hippie era and all of that. But, you know, you could take that same thing, fast forward years later, to the parents that don't understand their kids going goth, or the parents that don't understand their kids wanting to pierce their ears and stretch their lobes out big enough to put a dinner plate in. You know, the themes remain the same. The language may change, the pop culture references may change, but the rest of the stories are timeless. And even for me, who has not raised children of my own, I mean, I still find the humor and joy in it. So Erma Bombeck, if you haven't read her, check her out. She is truly, in my opinion, an American treasure in the world of writing. So that's a recommendation for today. Enjoy.